What are you the 1% of? I think it's like 0.1 to 0.5% of women or something, but I have a double uterus, medically called a didelphys uterus. A septum separates my uterus, which kinda made them form into two separate ones, and the septum continues down into the vagina, so I also have a left and right side. Not fun to deal with, but I'm too scared to get the surgery for it. I was born with a cardiac rhythm disorder. Normal heart rate for a newborn is like 130 per minute. Mine was like 30. I heard from my mother my case was so rare that several cardiologists from all over the country ditched their conferences to fly to the hospital I was in and to see how to fit a pacemaker into a newborn. Ed, thank you so much for the upvotes, awards. You are all awesome. Went to the optometrist recently and he said I have a uniquely shaped right cornea and said I was in the 1%. Did tests for a degenerative disease that I couldn't remember, but I'm in the clear, some Latin-sounding disease. Corns blah blah. The doctor said most people generally have half a portion of astigmatism in their eyes. My right eye has 5 portions. Not sure if it's the 1% or not, but no, it's very rare. Womb twisted itself back to front when I was pregnant. Fetus should really not have been viable, but she's now a very energetic and beautiful 20-month-old. They were going to induce me early because the twist, that we didn't know about at this point, was causing me so much pain. Thankfully a nurse felt something was strange with my cervix. Cervix ordered another scan. Cut to emergency C-section. Surgeon had no idea what he was looking at when he opened me up. Consultant called in. No one in the hospital had ever seen anything like it. They took photos. Every nurse said they wanted to see them. We were lucky. The consultant said that afterwards she had done some research and only found a handful of records, and the outcome of the surgery was not good. At least one of us shouldn't be here. If I had been induced I would have died in incredible pain, unable to deliver, and baby would have probably died from stress. We are now a case study and have changed the way that hospital responds to pain in pregnancy. I had a life-threatening reaction to a common prescription drug. It literally caused huge patches of my skin to fall off and my internal organs to begin liquefying. This reaction is so rare that they don't even have to list it as a potential side effect. 6 cases have occurred with over 10 million people taking this drug. I don't like to name the drug because the problem was with my body, not the medicine itself. I don't want to scare people away from a life-saving drug that isn't to blame for what happened. I'm fully recovered now, by the way. 2 eye colors, blue and brown. This is what my eye looks like. It's sectoral heterochromia. Edit. Since this is getting a lot of attention, the condition is called heterochromia. There are different kinds of it. Some have one color for each eye. This is called complete heterochromia. Some have different color around the center, central heterochromia, and some have sectoral, which essentially looks like a pie chart. Come visit our heterochromia if you have it too and post a pic. We love to see our heterochromia friends, or if you just wanna check out some eyes. D. I have a fantasia. I can't form images in my mind. If I read a book, for instance, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the characters look like. My brain just doesn't work like that. I found out at 30 that other people actually visualize things in their head. I always thought it was kinda like a figure of speech or something. I was addicted to heroin for a decade. I got clean and stayed clean. 5 years later, I've never relapsed and never see it happening. They say 10% of addicts get clean and stay clean. That number has proved to be high. From my personal experience, I've been to 38 funerals in 4 years. None were anything but overdoses. I'm still here. I'm one of the ones who made it out. Edit. I wasn't expecting this to gain traction. Thank you to all for your kind words of encouragement. If you have an addict in your life, know that there is a difference between the person and the drug. Usually, Of course there's shitty people, and that they feel like they're alone in the world. I can't really offer advice, just be kind. That's all. Be kind. Thank you. I have small intestinal cancer. The type is the same as colon cancer, but where it's located is less than 1% of worldwide diagnoses per year. But I've signed papers for 11 different oncologists to be able to access my records to see what works, what doesn't, etc. because they just don't get enough examples of it. Kind of hit or miss on procedures to work with, which treatments first, which type of chemo, etc. I've also said that if it ever reaches a point where I'm terminal and common treatments just don't work anymore, I'm willing to go all guinea pig, depending on exactly where it is, because of the veins coming off of your mesenteric artery to feed the small intestine. It usually isn't operable, so you are strictly on chemo and radiation. If the heavy levels don't do it, then you get to go on low-dose chemo daily for however long it works. Then it eventually does. Currently, according to my last PET scan, the tumors have disappeared. They won't say remission, just that it seems to be dormant right now. I'll take it. I can spin on my ass really fast, like probably around 20 full rotations in one go. I start standing up, then I put my left hand on the ground and I throw my right leg towards my left. Finally I retract my legs and put my hands on my knees and I go spinning like a motherfucking blade. I've been doing this since I was 3 or 4. I think it's like 0.1 to 0.5% of women or something, but I have a double uterus, medically called a didelphys uterus. A septum separates my uterus, which kinda made them form into 2 separate ones, and the septum continues down into the vagina, so I also have a left and right side. Not fun to deal with, but I'm too scared to get the surgery for it. I can spin on my ass really fast, like probably around 20 full rotations in one go. I start standing up, then I put my left hand on the ground and I throw my right leg towards my left. Finally I retract my legs and put my hands on my knees and I go spinning like a motherfucking blade. I've been doing this since I was 3 or 4. Went to the optometrist recently and he said I have a uniquely shaped right cornea and said I was in the 1%. Did tests for a degenerative disease that I couldn't remember, but I'm in the clear, some Latin-sounding disease. Corns blah blah. The doctor said most people generally have half a portion of astigmatism in their eyes. My right eye has 5 portions. I've died and had 6 wisdom teeth, and ironically those 2 things are related. For context, my heart stopped during my wisdom teeth extraction surgery. I don't remember for how long, but the anesthesiologist said he had the needle of adrenaline in his hand when my heart started beating again. I remember them waking me up and just saying, "You gave us a little scare there," before putting me back under and completing the surgery. After I came to and was sitting in the waiting room, I had to text my dad, because I couldn't talk. I think I died, in which my dad obviously freaked out because they never even told him. I was born with a cardiac rhythm disorder. Normal heart rate for a newborn is like 130 per minute. Mine was like 30. I heard from my mother my case was so rare that several cardiologists from all over the country ditched their conferences to fly to the hospital I was in and to see how to fit a pacemaker into a newborn. Edit. Thank you so much for the upvotes, awards. You are all awesome. I can swallow my tongue, or rather put my whole tongue in the hole to my nose, where the nose and mouth come together. Apparently my ear doctor said that none of her colleagues believed her when she said she had a patent that could do that, so I had to do it while she was filming, so she could prove them wrong. Hilarious to have my doctor shove her iPhone in my mouth. Alpha-gal allergy. I was bitten by a Lone Star tick and now I'm allergic to any kind of mammal meat. Most cases last between 6 to 8 months. Mine appears to be permanent after a decade. Skeptical. I can't even eat something that's been prepped/cooked on the same surface as beef or pork in restaurants. Waitstaff isn't too fond of me lol. I have a fantasia. I can't form images in my mind. If I read a book, for instance, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the characters look like. My brain just doesn't work like that. I found out at 30 that other people actually visualize things in their head. I always thought it was kinda like a figure of speech or something. I'm a redhead with blue eyes, which is apparently much rarer than you think. Probably not 1% I guess. Lame. Edit. Went golfing and came back to this exploding. Yes, I wore SPF 50 because it's like 37 degrees here in Ontario. Yes, I still probably burned, and for those asking, it's Danish. Irish heritage. Also, you're all awesome. Coppertone crew represent. Edit 2. I was also born 4 months premature in 1982. Around 2 or 3 pounds. What's up? Can't kill someone with no soul, you bastards. My last name, it's actually such a small number that to put it in a percent would be fruitless. My grandfather's parents came to Canada in the 1920s from Eastern Europe, a very Slavic last name. Their children, my grandfather and his siblings, decided to make the name more Canadian. Was a totally made-up name, so up to that point no one else on earth had ever had that last name. I am the 3rd generation with the name, and there are only roughly 50+ that have ever living with it. If you Google my last name, I am the top answer. With some cousins, there aren't many 4th generation males right now, so keeping the name going may be a challenge. My daughter was the first in Canada to have her cord blood harvested for stem cells. They were to be used for a bone marrow transplant for her brother. As a side note, my son was diagnosed with what was then called JCML, a child leukemia occurring in about 0.001% of all childhood leukemias. The survival rate, I believe, was in the 1 percentile range. I had a severe reaction to the measles shot when I was a kid because my mother refused the vaccines and didn't tell anyone. My dad found out when I was 4, and they gave me both doses at once. I died from the resulting immune overreaction, fever-induced febrile, grand mal seizures several times until I hit puberty. I think the statistic of me surviving past 3, not getting measles and then surviving the sudden death and then resulting febrile seizure around 10 times is a statistical outlier. I got my Pfizer shot as well as the tetanus multi-shot as soon as I could. Edit. From what I've learned from my doctor is that I'm probably the only one to have actually died several times due to the grand mal febrile seizures. Get your babies vaccinated ASAP so this stuff doesn't happen. I have bipolar 2, which is like 1/200. It's like a less intense but more depressive form of bipolar disorder. By less intense I mean I don't have manic episodes where I act like I drank 10 energy drinks in 1 minute. For me it fucks up my sleep really bad. Usually I have a week or 2 of only sleeping a couple hours a night. After the sleep deprivation is over I have 2-3 weeks of depression, which ranges from mild to intense. It's usually more intense that first week because I'm still recovering from the sleep deprivation. I take Seroquel to help stay asleep and use marijuana to help get to sleep. If I have any outside anxiety or stressors, the depression and sleep deprivation get really bad, and I've been suicidal a few times because of that. Late, but I'll add it anyway. Even though I'm actually in the 1.7%, I have Madelung's deformity in my left wrist, which for me resulted in my ulna and radius to form slightly bowed apart and no longer meet the wrist and hand bones. Took 20+ X-ray sessions, many clueless doctors, and one great one, and finally a specialist bringing it international to get it diagnosed. It's barely noticeable physically, and has a few physical drawbacks that are seldom an issue. Jimi Hendrix is believed to have had it, which made him able to angle his hand in a way that made his playing unique, which is pretty damn cool. I would beat anyone, full stop, at Wipeout Fusion on PS2, if aliens decided to invade the planet and said they'd destroy us if not for being beaten at game of Wipeout Fusion on the PS2. I'd confidently put myself forward as Earth's sole and obvious candidate for survival. I was able to quit heroin, alcohol, and marijuana and stay clean for 5 years all by myself with no rehab, no meetings, no Suboxone, no treatment, just pure willpower and mental fortitude, and have no desire to go back to that lifestyle. Also, I climb trees daily for a living, arborist, and according to a BMI I'm on the line for obese. Since most climbers are very skinny, I'm assuming I'm one of the only obese tree climbers in the country. Well, I read this recently, for every 100 people who are obese, only perhaps one will reach a healthy weight again, a new study states. So that's depressing as F, but also puts me in the 1%. 3 years ago I weighed 390 pounds, was pre-diabetic, walked with a limp and daily pain and pills. Now I weigh 194, no pills and love mountain biking. It can be done. If we're being honest, it would have to be surviving 27 years of heroin addiction relatively healthy. That includes surviving over 20 odds, half with an ambulance called and Narcan administered, and half where I just came to or woke up on the floor at home or in some coffee shop restroom. It also includes 3 surgeries and hospitalizations for abscesses on my arms, 11 detoxes, 5 treatment programs, and 3 halfway houses, and of course, like most every 4 drug user in America, I caught hepatitis C, but it's no longer detectable. I'm one of the very few with an immune system able to fight it off without any medication. Fortunately, this all ended over a decade ago, in 2010, when I got on a Suboxone program, and did it the right way. After just a few months, I just knew I was done with heroin. And so far that's been the case. I was just offered some a few weeks ago for free, and it wasn't that hard to decline. I am not extraordinary by any means, but faces are just super easy for me to remember and recognize behind age or makeup, prosthetics. I did a couple of online studies and found I was in the top percentile for facial recognition, never being a witness to a crime. But picking out criminals in lineups would be my superpower. I've got a rare disease called hyperhidrosis, which is just a fancy word for excessive sweating. According to Google, approx 5% of people in the world have it in one part of their body. I've got a full body version. Along with that, I've also got a condition called hidradenitis suppurativa, which has a supposed rate between 0.03% to 4%. It's a chronic disease that constantly opens cysts around various parts of your body and, at least for me, gets worse with heat and sweat. Now pairing these two rare diseases in their worst forms in a single person makes for one real nasty combo. Not something I'm necessarily happy with, but it's a 1% I suppose. Tongue. Not sure if this is exactly 1%, but I have an issue with my knees called Osgood-Schlatter disease. This is typically caused by repetitive use of the joint children, particularly in sports. But mine is genetic. Basically what has happened is that one of the tendons in my knees is too tight and constantly pulls on the bone it is connected to. The bones in my lower leg responded to this force via Wolff's Law and created a bump of bone that looks like a second kneecap. This condition is most common in men and only in one knee. I am a female who has it in both knees. We're not incredibly rich or anything, but my wife and I absolutely prioritize entertainment and media consumption, to the point where our electronic setups would probably put us in that 1% category. I run a $5,000 PC and play games on an extremely expensive OLED in my office. My living room setup includes a PS5 and another very nice TV for my wife to use. We're just well-adjusted middle-aged gamers who have never grown out of this hobby. We've been together 13 years and have a 2-year-old daughter. Finding time to play is tough, but I make sure to get at least an hour or two in every evening after we put our little girl to bed.